The end to this presidency, you were saying, is much worse than Nixon's.
Well, first of all, Nixon was not a secessionist, seditious president of the United States who inspired and celebrated a riot to burn down the Capitol, which is really what occurred. He encouraged it. Those people went there because of his incitement. Nixon was in a different category in that regard. He was a real criminal president who deserved having to leave office, and Republicans got him out of office, forced his resignation. Very different than what we've seen with Trump. The Republicans have enabled him and allowed him to stay in office. We saw in the House yesterday how Republicans continue to defend him, don't want to see him impeached and convicted, at least in the House they don't. Yet at the same time, there's something fascinating in what Jim has just reported, and that's about the pardon question. Look, the worst place you can be probably in the world, not just in America, is in Donald Trump's head. But you know that when Donald Trump says things about he doesn't want to hear anything about something, often he does want to hear about it. And I hear in there perhaps a little bit that if Pence indeed was willing to pardon him, perhaps he would be willing to take it. But he doesn't trust Pence to do it. In Nixon's case, President Ford waited a month before he pardoned Nixon. He refused to pardon Nixon in the final days, but a month later decided for the unity of the country and for him to have his own presidency at a time of great economic crisis in the country and other crises, that he would pardon Nixon. So there's something quite fascinating in what Jim Acosta is reporting there.
Well, Nixon, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Nixon worked on rehabilitating his reputation. I mean, that was his sort of major post-presidency project, wasn't it? Sort of becoming a counselor or a senior statesman to other politicians. It's unclear if that's something President Trump is even capable of.
Well, it's also unclear the degree to which Nixon succeeded. He wrote some very interesting and remarkable books, but he still was a pariah because of the horror of his crimes, which included, very similar in some ways to Trump, undermining the very basis of American democracy, the electoral system, through a series of burglaries and trying to engineer the nomination of a particular Democrat through undermining the electoral process. But the real difference in the final days is Nixon was not a deluded, deranged, out of control President of the United States who has to be restrained in a constitutional straitjacket, which is really what is going on now. The military won't heed his orders. We know some about that. The people around him are trying to restrain him because they think he is dangerous, that he does not have any idea of the national interest of the United States, nor has he for a long time. Nixon, in his final days, though he was drunk part of the time, went to introspection. He summoned Henry Kissinger to the Lincoln sitting room in the second floor of the White House. They got down on their knees. Nixon said, "Henry, you're not an Orthodox Jew and I'm not an Orthodox Quaker, but let's pray." And Nixon started sobbing and pounding the carpet and saying, "What have I done? What have I done?" And then the next day, and remember what Nixon's crimes were, his abuses of power in going after his enemies, seeking vengeance on his enemies, much like Trump does. And the next day, at his farewell, he said the ultimate introspective comment about what he had done. He said, "I gave them a sword to destroy him." We'll see nothing like that, and that kind of understanding from Donald Trump.